no empirical evidence for the existence of God, no empirical evidence for the existence of God, any theory, gravity, germ theory, the heliocentric model, the theory of evolution, all theories are made to explain the empirical evidence. Empirical evidence is specifically what the theory and belief in God is designed to explain. Empirical evidence is why all throughout any human civilization, at any time in history, at any place in the world, we have always had some sort of theological, metaphysical awareness, understanding or misunderstanding, some primitive, more superstitious, pantheistic with mythologies, some more philosophically rigorous, the monotheists, the early Greeks, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. They've all been conceived to explain the empirical evidence. So what is empirical evidence? Empirical evidence is what we see and observe in the real world, as opposed to the information we come to by philosophizing and theorizing. It's information we have about the real world that we find through observing behavior, documenting, and then finding patterns in the behavior and understanding the way the world works through experience. So what kind of empirical evidence would I be referring to that leads to these theistic conclusions that atheism sort of has to reject? That every effect, for example, that every effect has a cause, that anything that changes or begins to do something it wasn't doing before, like exist, has to have a cause, something that caused it to change or to do what it wasn't doing before. And atheism has to reject this empirical evidence. Another example, that any instance where we see the creation of information with syntax, it is always and without fail the product of an intentional mind who puts it together with the purpose to communicate information. Atheism has to reject this empirical evidence. Another example is every time we see the creation and appearance of a functional complexity, some machine that is complex of multiple parts and that has some sort of a function. Every time we see this appear and be created, we see it as the result of a designer, a creator with an intelligent mind and final causation, with intention for it to accomplish some sort of function or role. Another example would be that empirical evidence shows us that everything in physical reality is quantifiable and countable. There is no room in physics or in the physical realm in our four dimensions for any kind of infinity anywhere, and atheism has to reject the empirical evidence on this in order to appeal to an infinite multiverse or infinite regressions of causes. So I'm not saying that there is not any possibly some philosophically sophisticated explanation to circumnavigate what the empirical evidence is obviously telling us, but empirical evidence is not the friend of the atheistic position. Atheists should not be appealing to the empirical evidence because the empirical evidence is precisely what leads us to the theistic conclusion. Atheists should be keeping that on the down low and looking for ways to circumnavigate and ignore the empirical evidence if they want to be able to hold and maintain their position.